So, quick introduction. We're looking at how can we better support global and local climate action, looking ahead to LCAW 2023. But I did promise you that we're going to start with some personal highlights. So I just want to mention one from my side, just to get us going. And that was actually something that you saw earlier today. So thank you so much to the LCAW team for enabling us to show the voices of students and members of parliament from Nigeria. And actually, the video clip that you saw was a selection of voices from surgeries that we have held across different states in Nigeria, not only last week, but on Wednesday. So the little girl who you saw in the very front, who did that beautiful little curtsy at the end, she actually was one of the students who took part in a surgery in the capital city in Abuja, in Nigeria, just on Wednesday. So that for me was a personal highlight, and I can see that my colleagues are smiling in the front because we know our Nigerian colleagues will be absolutely delighted. And Nigeria is so important because we're talking of the power of the continent of Africa. And Nigeria, of course, is the largest country and the largest economy and hugely enterprising. And I think we need a much greater emphasis on youth and enterprise because that's where the energy is. And for those who are in government, the policymakers, those who are creating the legislative infrastructure, but also the business support understructure at the grassroots level, that's their job, and they should have been doing their job 20 years ago. So today, this conversation would have been different, but that's where we are. And on the note of enterprise and entrepreneurship, we have Nick Henry. So let me start with a very quick introduction, just names only, because I'd like you to please introduce yourselves and what you do. So let me start with you, Saeed.
Hi, Saeed Ahmed from Community Energy London.
I could have done that. I want you to talk more about what you're actually doing. So this is Saeed Ahmed.
Beg your pardon?
From Community Energy London and also a fellow commissioner on the London Sustainable Development Commission. When I come to each of you, please, for your highlights, please then talk a little bit more about what you're doing because that provides a context for what you'll be referring to in terms of your highlights for LCAW. And Saeed, actually, we have 3 people on here who are not new to LCAW, and you're veterans. But we do have 2 people who are new to LCAW this year. And let me start with you, please. Sonia Scantleberry Kamara from Go Green Climate Action and Urban Festival.
Yeah, so it's Go Green, Climate Action, Urban Festival.
Exactly, but I know it's Go Green Haringey. And Go Green Haringey has been phenomenal throughout the week, and we'll come to you later, and you're going to talk to us about it. Yeah. And on my left here is a dear friend, Natasha Friedman, who, Natasha, when you got involved with the very first LCAW in 2019, we worked with you when you were at the English National Opera, and you put on this amazing production of students engaging with Noah's Flood, which was unusually not at the Colosseum in Covent Garden, but actually took place in Tower Hamlets at the Royal
Stratford East.
That's Stratford East, indeed. And so you've been with us on this journey for quite some time, and Natasha now is with her own organization, Studio 2909. And on my right is a newcomer, and this is Kathy Lee. And Kathy is here with a bunch of fantastic young people because she represents Youngo. And for those of you who don't know Youngo, that is the official constituency of the United Nations. And we're delighted that you're here as a new partner, not just for LCAW, but for specifically our school's climate summit and our youth work. So we look forward to hearing from you. And Nick Henry, a veteran, from the very, very beginning, from Climate Action. And Nick, you are hosting one of the very largest flagship events, the Climate Innovation Forum at LCAW. So this is our panel. Please give a show of appreciation before we dive in and find out what they've been doing. So as I promised, our very first question, I'm going to have 3 questions to really direct the conversation. And it's very informal. There are no presentations, even though we know the technology behind us would work if you had, but that was not on offer. This was literally to find out from you and then to open it up to a conversation. So 3 quick questions, and let's start with the first one, which is about London Climate Action Week, your personal highlights, and what value you derive from the process of LCAW, the community of LCAW and how it's enhanced your reach and your impact and your networking. So let's begin with you, Said.
Thanks, Marlene. So, two quick thoughts on two highlights. One which is very close to my heart because I've just spent the last month organising it and delivered it yesterday. But one actually was this morning, which was the London Council's event, which was a climate showcase. So this was an event chaired by Mayor Phil Glanville from Hackney and involved 7 streams of work that London councils are undertaking at the moment on different aspects of climate action across the city. And so if you don't know London councils, they're kind of the trade associations for the 33 boroughs in London. And a couple of years ago, I was highly critical that they really didn't do an awful lot on climate change or energy issues. And that's changed quite significantly over the last 2 to 3 years. And sitting on the kind of Teams event and looking at not only the breadth of action, but the depth of action and the contribution by the officers to actually what they're undertaking, largely on a basis of not getting additional resource. This is work they're doing over and above their normal day job, was just really inspiring, and it carried on from everything to do with retrofit to decarbonising transport, for looking at ways in involving community issues. So it's just a really significant journey that councils in London have undergone to take on the climate emergency challenge. So that was one which I wasn't directly involved in, sorry. The one I was involved in was Community Energy London's event, which took place last night, which was called The Power of Community Energy. And we divided it into 3 sections. One, just talking about the number of projects that we're seeing in London at the moment, which is accelerating quite markedly. 2, the way in which community groups are working with their local communities to shape the projects and what they're delivering. And 3, the way in which community groups are innovating. And so just very quickly, just to mention from that, and we were really pleased as well that Shirley Rodriguez, the Deputy Mayor for Energy and Environment, gave a keynote to the event as well, which just kind of highlighted the Mayor's support for community energy in London. And the particular highlight from that event, I think, was under innovation, being a bit of a techie policy nerd, I asked people to reflect on things about, are they using storage? Are they using local supply? Are they using heat pumps? And my members did the best thing, which was completely ignore me. And they came to kind of present things that they're doing to innovate by talking to their local communities, how they're bringing through representatives for the communities, how they're training young people, how they're doing workshops. So it wasn't about innovation about the kit, it was about innovation in the dialogue with their local communities to shape the projects. And the most kind of inspiring talk of the night was by my colleague Giovanna of South East London Community Energy, who talked about the kind of existentialist crisis of climate energy, which really spurred her on from her academic career at SPRU, at the Science Policy Research Unit, to take on community energy. How she'd written poetry to kind of shape her thoughts into the projects that she was undertaking, and how she was using that to communicate to the community that she was working with. So that was really inspiring as well, and that went down really well with the audience, I think, that she's thinking outside the box, she's thinking outside the policies and the technologies to really reach into the community to help convey what community energy groups are doing, how they can get involved directly, and how they can also spread the message. So that was just a really fantastic event, 3 hours. And just very quickly, what's LCAW doing for that? Well, I can be a bit insular at looking only at my groups and the people I work with and the element of councils. The really good thing about LCAW is it kind of makes me step back and think about how we spread the message more widely. And that was a core theme of our event yesterday. It was, how can we go to Londoners to say how you can get involved in these projects, how you can invest in these projects, and how you can influence the groups in your local areas to make sure their projects are actually delivering what you want. And that might not always be about carbon reductions. That might be about helping with my bills, helping with my prepayment meter, taking older people to the shop to top up their charge card. So it's a much broader debate now, and I think we reflected that quite well. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Said. And actually, I was thinking when you were talking about the advice that you provide, that it's like a citizens' climate advice surgery that you're providing, really. It's a one-stop shop. And as you say, local government, the boroughs, London councils, they've been a fantastic success story. We've seen them become more and better organised. We saw that since 2019, they've actually all declared climate emergencies and are now competing amongst each other to see who's going to be benchmarked best. And as you say, the community energy story is another one of the success stories. And it's not just a London story, but it's a national story. And on that, the subject of success is obviously you are another success in Haringey. So over to you, Sonia, for your highlights.
Thank you. Thanks for that. We've had a spectacular week, to be perfectly honest. I think that we had a variety of events and activities, and they all stand out for different reasons because they all touch on all of the strands in terms of health and well-being, in terms of employment, in terms of energy, food as well. Because in Haringey, we have over 30 food banks that feed people on a daily basis. And that's attached to the fuel challenge that we face now. So when we had our launch at Blocker, which was a big festival held in Lordship Recreation Ground, had over 1,000 people attend this event. And for those of you that don't know in the studio, in the auditorium here, the steel pans are actually made with recycled cans. They take the old drums from the oil and they tune that and it becomes a musical instrument. So on Saturday, we launched at Blocker with the support of the local authority. Pira was there, the leader of the council. And it was just a way that people can get involved with climate action. On the day, we did litter picking because we have soft approaches to get communities involved in doing things around the whole green agenda. And then on the Monday, that was brilliant. So then it gave us a chance to promote what we're doing for the rest of the week. On the Monday, we had our business global networking, where we had representation from Cornell, Westminster College. They've got these new hubs that are offering education and training to groups, individuals. In Haringey, we have this entrenched, I have to use that word. It is entrenched in one way, another way it's not. We have a lot of innovation, but there's high unemployment, and that seems to stick. So this is an opportunity in terms of the whole green and climate action for people to get involved, but not just at the low level retrofitting things. You've got a lot of people that have got, in terms of STEM as well, really great ideas that can change things, innovate things. So on Monday, it was brilliant to see so many businesses. That event was attended by 72 people, and it was supported by a local hub that do shared office space. And it was a great time to network because in this sort of arena, and it is an arena because it's an industry, you need to know what's out there. So we provided pathways for that. But I think if I think about the whole week, which we had wellness, we popped up a beauty salon, we had arts and crafts, had all of these things. But the thing that really, I got to say, inspired me to not only me and the team, because it's not just me, we've got other individuals that we work with. But what really was inspirational was we popped up a clothes bank for the children and toy bank as for the parents to come along on the Wednesday, and on the Tuesday, and that sat alongside a food bank. And it was really interesting. You had lots of families that came along and they actually took things. But when they realised that was there, you had families that came back and donated things automatically, things that their children had outgrown, perfectly good toys. And for us, it just shows that once you provide a platform for people to see how they can get involved, really be involved and not just be on the outskirts of things, they are willing to be involved, make a contribution and actually make change. Because we found that people can make the change. It's just a case of knowing where to go to get the support. So, it's been really brilliant because we're talking about London Climate Action. What does that mean? If you're somebody, like yesterday, we had the NEA come and support one of our programmes. They delivered a workshop and they showed you what a smart meter is, how to read your smart meter. They gave pens so you can read your smart meter. All these little things, a lot of us in the room take for granted, but they are genuine challenges for individuals. So it's been good from that perspective that we can let individuals know that the climate conversation involves all of us, and we all have to make a contribution because it's going to impact on all of us. So whatever your contribution is, we're willing to accept it, take it and share it. That's really important. And I think that our involvement in terms of the LCAW has been great because it's given us a chance to profile what we do. Because, you know, you're there kind of working in a silo, you know, and it's just nice to raise the profile that we can show what communities are doing. Because our event was organised with the support of a stakeholder, the Bridge Renewal Trust. They supported us, and Haringey Council as well. But all of the activities were delivered by community individuals. And I think that makes a difference because they are actually engaged with the people that under normal circumstances would not really, you know, they just wouldn't get involved because they don't think they're welcome, they don't understand it. But when you've got somebody who you're familiar with just showing you another way how you can do things, it is honestly received, and people do want to make change. They do, because it's affecting people's lives. You know, if you have to feed your family from a food bank, so many things are in play there, you know, how you feel about it. We were talking to a lady who said, I feel, you know, she was forced to use the food bank because they really had no food. So it's that dignity, you know, how you do things respectfully, but you also let people know there is a way that you have to work yourself out of this because your situation is not going to be sustainable. You know, we can't, you know, they're there, but 30 food banks in one borough, we think is a lot, but you have to think, if they're not there, what happens to the individuals? So this all impacts on the climate, you know, and it is really important. We educate people. So that's really what we're about. So, you know, we're proud to be part of it, really. It's been really exciting for all of us.
No, thank you very, very much. There is so much that you're doing. It's really a microcosm of what London Climate Action Week is really about, bringing the communities together, but where the point of need is. And you started with food, and we've always had food poverty in London. I live in a part of London which has had food deprivation since year dot. And of course, that's been accentuated so much more. And middle-class families, you know, who have fallen on hard times with the economic crisis, they're now going to food banks. And we'd actually started the last LCAW, which was during the pandemic, with one of our partners, which is an organization that provides vegetarian food, the Hare Krishnas, to many, many different parts of London. But astonishingly enough, and not in those parts of London, like South London where we are, where there isn't, where there are very, you know, there aren't those kind of provisions. So you are absolutely filling a gap through social innovation. I love the way that you were talking about beauty salons and music and everything, different communities coming together. My daughter actually loves steel pans and has been playing steel pans in primary school and is so frustrated because in the current secondary, they don't have a steel pan band. But the person who knows all about music and voice is Natasha. So Natasha, I'd love to move over to you next and ask you about, I know you're doing some amazing work. I'm not going to be stumm. I'd love for you to talk about the work that you're doing in East London especially.
Thanks, Melanie. Yeah, thank you. The work that we're doing now actually came really out of conversations that happened in that first year of LCAW. We'd connected because of your other work around teaching women and girls to swim. And of course, the story of Noah's flood is a story of drowning. So we engaged communities in Shadwell and Tower Hamlets, the Bangladeshi communities, in conversations around flood risks in London. And we were working with schools that have got completely tarmac playgrounds and schools built on floodplains. And we had fantastic improvising, swimming and singing and madness that year, which was all built around the production of Noah's Flood. And we had a conversation where you said, gosh, the work that you're doing with the arts can actually penetrate communities in ways that some of these high-level conversations can't, is a really important part of how we bring people along into the conversation. So I thought, okay, better keep going. I left ENO just before the pandemic, which is, it turns out, not a brilliant time to leave a big organisation. And interestingly, when the arts were completely shut down and even education programmes were really shut down, everyone was furloughed, I had so many schools phoning me and saying, what can you do to help? Because our communities are really struggling. They need to make sense of the madness that we're living through. They need joy. So I said, okay, sure, I'll set something up. So we started working through the pandemic. And again, conversations that we were having were flagging the importance of talking about air pollution in this whole conversation. I've done a lot of work with music and with singing. So the idea of linking singing and songwriting to air pollution, to our ability to breathe, felt really natural. Of course, as COVID and air pollution stories were circulating in the media, it felt even more important that we were having these conversations, although we couldn't sing at that time because we were told not to. So we piloted a whole way of working remotely, working with these schools, and basically it led to us deepening that work this year. So this year we've been working with whole school model in the glorious Barking and Dagenham, one of my favourite boroughs of London, I have to say. We've been really engaging the whole school, all teaching staff across all curriculum subjects to think about where they can make connections in their teaching subjects that link to our human right to breathe, lung health, anything to do with social justice linked to climate emergency, their health inequalities that they face, all of that kind of thing. And they've really embraced it. So the whole of Year 7 have been in all of their different teaching subjects, thinking about the topic of our right to breathe clean air. And we've been linking it also to our right to even have the mental headspace to imagine what a positive future looks like, because these sorts of kids, they don't really see any kind of positive future for themselves at all, let alone having any kind of impact on anybody else's future being a positive one. And it all feels a bit mapped out for them and they don't really have any agency. Inviting them to really get into the topic across the work they're doing in school. And then we've been going in with professional composers and singers and storytellers and songwriters, having a lot of fun and bringing out their stories through lyrics and music. And my highlight of this week, getting to the point, was 300 Year 7s outside in the playground with drones and cameras and audio recording, performing to the camera and performing to their peers and other year groups the music that they'd written themselves about their right to have the headspace to imagine forward what a positive future is, thinking about their right to breathe clean air and thinking about their want to be heard by wider communities. And that's why also for that, a school like that being part of LCAW is brilliant because it gives them a kind of wider platform for their work to come out. We'll see whether the music video was any good, but it was fun.
I was just going to say, so Natasha's here because today she is in the shed actually doing the editing for this music video. So when are we going to get to see it?
Monday, hopefully, but let's
Monday,
see.
okay. So midnight, so still on Sunday. Anyway, it's going to be a highlight of LCAW. So thank you very much, Natasha, and Riverside School, and all the other schools that you're working with also. So I'm now going to move over and say hello, Kathy. Kathy and I have been Zoom buddies for a very long time now, and we've actually
WhatsApp buddies.
That's true, and WhatsApp buddies. But we've been working virtually, and this is the first time just here that we met for the first time. So it's lovely to see you in person. And so this is Kathy Loy, and Kathy is at Deloitte. May I mention that? Which is her job. But she's also with Youngo, and I would love for you to just introduce Youngo. We've had a number of Youngos throughout the week and at receptions we've held, but the community here may not be familiar with your work, so over to you.
Great, and hi everyone. Of course, I'm here in a pure personal capacity, and just a brief background. First, we'd like to thank all the LCAW colleagues from either the organizations of the steering committee, and also special thanks to E3G colleagues for all the amazing events throughout the week. And I love you guys so much. And just a brief introduction of Youngo. Youngo is the youth constituency of the UNFCCC, which is the UN Climate Convention, also known on social media UN Climate Change. So what Youngo does is gathering, we have over 10,000 individual members and over 1,000 organizations, fully youth-led and or youth individuals or youth-led organizations or organizations focusing on how to empower youth in the space of climate change. So what Youngo does is, one, in the UNFCCC area, engaging with policy, either contributing to UNFCCC policy papers or documents through task forces, working groups of each committee, or engaging in the SBs in Bonn or COPs every year to really further the agenda of youth engagement in various decisions, for example, dimensions of youth in the Glasgow Climate Pact, and also my favorite COP item ever is to get youth their first seat at a constituted body of the UNFCCC I started working on it when I was 19, and I can't believe we got a COP26 decision to finally make that happen. So there are many interesting things that Young is working on, but also at the same time, we acknowledge that policy level is not enough. We also engage with youth, specifically with a focus on grassroots youth and also youth who have not been empowered enough, especially ones from developing countries, from LDCs, from CIS, and also to give them the opportunity to engage in the UNFCCC platform to demystify what UNFCCC is and how they can add their voices to the processes, to the stakeholders, and also to the policymakers. So that's a brief overview of Youngo, and also we also empower youth-led initiatives, finding them either financial support or other capacity building resources to support them in different areas. So that's a brief overview of Youngo, and I guess just want to briefly share, I guess, my highlight for LCAW this week. And I actually just came back yesterday to London, and also that happy to hear from my fellow South London residents. Love the area. And I guess my highlight, I'm really amazed by all the interesting events, and especially so many events either organized by youth or youth-led organizations, or events, for example, the one yesterday by Chatham House focusing on youth engagement and organizing a roundtable gathering so many interesting and important young voices from around London and around the UK. I think is indeed critical, and happy to see that various organizations put the attention of youth engagement at the forefront and to put the efforts in and engage and hear their voices and also see what they want to see from LCAW and also from especially events related to discussions in the lead up to COP27. And I think it's indeed a critical year where UK hand over the presidency to COP27, and also that youth voices or opinions have been reflected in various events, and also there are events not focusing on youth, but I think very happy to see some younger members here and also attending events throughout the week, especially some really interesting events. For example, in my other capacity with the Global Center on Adaptation, we organized an event together with AFDB on adaptation, also access to finance. And I think these events are also bringing critical knowledge and also interesting points to really give youth the capacity building to ensure that they can have the resources and have the knowledge to engage in these areas.
Thank you very much. And you've actually only just been in London since yesterday, but been busy with LCAW. And remember, LCAW does not finish today. We may have the closing ceremony, but we still have 2 more days of joy. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Nick Henry. And Nick from Climate Action is really one of the powerhouses of LCAW. And Nick, you've been doing this with the Climate Innovation Forum for so many years at COPs and continue to do it annually. But LCAW is something quite different. So I'd love to hear about your LCAW highlights this week.
Yes, thank you, Malini. Thank you for the introduction. So for those of you that don't know Climate Action, so we're a mission-led business. This is our 15th year, so I founded the company 15 years ago, and we've been working at COP for 12 years of that 15 years, running a major side event at COP for 12 years of the 15. And the purpose of the annual COP events is effectively bringing a multi-stakeholder platform together in the margins of COP, working with many of the UN agencies, private sector, and national and subnational governments to facilitate public-private partnerships and putting innovation at the heart of COP. So last year was a landmark year because we launched the concept of the innovation zone, which effectively, for those of you that know COP, is there's a blue zone, a green zone, and we wanted to in Glasgow create an innovation zone, and that was complicated last year because of COVID and many other challenges. So the Climate Innovation Forum, which we run, we launched in London 4 years ago. I think, was it 4 years ago?
Yeah,
I'm sure
it is.
LCAW's 4th year, I think it is.
Yeah.
Nick? Yes, it's 4th year. It's all been a bit of a blur in the last couple of years. So we launched the Climate Innovation Forum with a lens effectively on the UK and mostly at a subnational level, looking at what local authorities need to do to play a key role in getting the UK to net zero. This year we took a little bit of a different slant on it, given the UK's role as still with the presidency of COP26. So we're now 5 months out scarily from COP28, and the Climate Innovation Forum, which ran on Tuesday at the QE2 Centre, brought together 720 attendees out of 1,000 registered delegates for quite a large event, one-day event focusing on, I guess, twofold. One on retrospectively looking at the promises made at COP26 and where we are in that process, and also looking forward to COP28. COP27, sorry. So I'm working this right now. I spent my whole morning on COP28, so, which is bizarre because that never normally happens. So apologies, COP27, and looking forward at what we need to achieve, and getting key insights from not only the Egyptian government, but also from the UNFCCC, who we've been working closely with over the years, with Ove Samad delivering a really interesting message to the event, and Greg Hand. So the event was run in partnership with BEIS, which is the UK Government Department for Business, and that which was very successful in terms of engaging the private sector, especially in the clean tech space, and looking at how that private sector needs to can play a critical role in our transition to net zero. So highlights. I'm afraid I haven't done much else in the week other than focus on the event and COP27 and COP28. But to answer your question, the highlights for me actually were we ran a competition to find 25 startups that we thought were the most promising startups in the UK, and actually meeting those startups and listening and watching the interaction between those startups and our delegates, I find highly rewarding, because for someone that's I've never worked for anyone else, I've only ever run a business, so I know what that journey's like. And when you're trying to make something work and you're doing it on your own, you don't have funding, or you're trying to get funding and you're trying to make something work, that's a scary journey for many people. So I think I love meeting people that are on that journey, and anything I can do to help those people, I find very, very rewarding personally. So creating a platform for early stage entrepreneurs that have decided to dedicate their time and their journeys to creating impact businesses I find personally very rewarding. And some of those companies I think are going to fly in terms of their products. So for me, that was really exciting. We also launched a very interesting initiative for Mission Innovation, who were one of the partners of the event, which is a global first, which the UNFCCC are also involved in, which is creating a benchmarking policy around effectively managing and creating a benchmarking policy for how events can be effective, and because events are massive conveners of people, although we've missed them all for the last 2 years, but and we're going to be launching that at COP, evaluating what we're going to do at COP27. So that's really exciting because it's a global first, and there's going to be, I think, a very interesting journey to put in place, to define the criteria and to define how to optimize and leverage this for COP27. And the last was the launch. We signed a partnership with the Egyptian government on Monday, so it was announcing that launch on Tuesday, which is a very ambitious plan for what we're going to be doing, putting innovation and finance, private sector finance, at the heart of COP27, which is going to be extremely complicated and many, many long nights, I can imagine, to make it work. But it's extremely exciting as a private sector company to be playing that role in effectively bringing innovation and finance in a 6,000 square metre event space, which is about 5 football pitches, probably, roughly, right next to the Blue Zone, is a huge challenge with 2 whole full weeks of programming and building a venue. So we've got a pretty small team, and we're going to be gearing up. I think we're taking on another 20 people to try and meet the needs of delivering this project. So it's been a rewarding week. It's been a challenging week. But best of all, I think it's great to be face to face again with everyone, meeting in person, because you can't beat the value of those relationships, and you can't. And it's as much as we've all learnt that Zoom and technology plays a critical role in bringing people together, you cannot beat face to face relationships and bumping into somebody, in an old fashioned way. And certainly some of the people I bumped into on Tuesday at our event, what's already come from those outcomes, or the likely outcomes that's come from those bumping into conversations, I'm sure will lead to way more than I ever would have had to do bumping into them or not doing that on Zoom. So
And it's the same with diplomacy. I think diplomacy is going to be very different when people are actually face to face. But I mean, as you can see, everyone, Nick is very much somebody who plans ahead and who plans big. And you should have also been there on the first panel, because the way in which you are brokering that relationship between the entrepreneurs, business, the investors, and the government for COP27. I mean, I've no doubt that it's going to be amazing. For any COP, if you want to know how to get in there and make friends with the government and actually have a space, Nick is the person. All the rest of us are like, still trying to build a relationship, and you've already signed the deal and published it already, announced it on Tuesday. So fantastic, well done. We are now not going to stop with the questions, but now that you've heard from our amazing panelists up here, and some of the questions are beginning to come in, what I'd like you to think about is what you need. So you've already addressed some of those issues, but really to get into the brass tacks of it, how can a process like LCAW help your sector move to the next level? And just to think about the question I'm going to ask you afterwards, because I'm just looking at the time and we want to bring things to a close, but not miss anything. So it's about the needs of your sector and where LCAW 2023 needs to head. So what's the direction for LCAW? Bearing in mind that COP27 hopefully will accelerate and not impede the direction that we want to travel. So let me start again with you, Saeed. We'll go down here and then we'll pick up one or two of the last questions that are coming in.
The question is, Margaret?
Both of them, just pick them up organically.
Yeah, so
what you need and directions for next year.
On what we need. So first of all, just huge credit to the LCAW team for bringing this year together. So it felt smoother this year. Everybody was geared up. They knew about what they had to do, and so even though bits of information came late, it came. So that was really good. So a massive credit to the team for doing that. So yeah, my first note that I had down was you guys are doing a great job already. So to kind of big that up in the first instance. So a couple of thoughts that came to my mind was, it was great to hear about what Sonia's doing in Haringey. So for me, one of the things was the outer boroughs. An awful lot of what we're doing is very concentrated still in the centre of London. So it was great to hear some of the stories about the outer boroughs, and long may that continue, because I think that's where lots of the potential is for carbon reduction and energy still remains massively untapped. Smaller organisations, is there a way which we could have a pot of money to provide a bit of lead time and some funding for them? Because one of the things is that when the CCC report was published earlier this week, one of the papers that came out with it was how we convey the issue, or communicate the issue to communities and local authorities, and there was a clear idea there that we're not doing enough. But one of the things is, I work with lots of people and there are volunteers. Everything I do with Community Energy London is to get money into the organisation to pay people for their time. So virtually every dialogue that I have with communities, I give them money to come to my workshop, because their views are important. In any other institution, you'd probably want to pay people to do it, or they're getting paid already to do it. These people are doing it outside of their normal day jobs. So I think I'll stop there, but the smaller organisations, some of the outer boroughs, and perhaps helping those small organisations with the fund would be really helpful.
And a pot of money that we've been talking about for quite some time for LCAW to grease the wheels and enable people to do that.
Just one other note, just on adaptation, is the kind of poor cousin of climate change. I've spent all my life working on mitigation issues, but it's increasingly obvious that we need to look at adaptation issues in the city, and that's one of the areas that I hope we can look into and blend into some of the mitigation issues at the same time.
You've made Annette Figueiredo from the GLA a very happy woman. She's the adaptation champion in the GLA.
My job is to help make sure Annette's happy.
Job done. Sonia.
I think really a lot of the communities that we represent are really not mainstream. And I think that we really have to look at the social justice aspect of it. I don't think that's to the forefront of the whole climate conversation. I really don't. And I think that it's something we know is impacting the poorest people. We know the dialogue, we know that, but we still have not made enough effort, in my opinion, to respect and put things in place to deal with that. And I think another thing that we can look at in terms of LCAW is everything what Sai just said there, but I think we really need to look at, we talk about inclusion, but if we look in the room, yes, we have got people included, but the inclusion in terms of diversity is not really it's poor, because we're talking about London, and London is a cosmopolitan, vibrant, it's all these things in London. So it's imperative that we have representation from the individuals that are actually facing the most impact, because we always seem to be speaking on their behalf. Do you understand what I mean? It's like if we have got the tools and the networks to engage people properly, I think that the climate journey is going to be, we're going to achieve our outcomes a lot easier, a lot quicker, and we're going to bring people along. I think that that's one of the things that we need to do. And I also think, I was talking to my colleague Robert, and I think I'm always reading about, this COP, this, or in our brochure, we've got a few. We've actually got a jargon buster in there, okay, because it is a note of, we've put a jargon buster in there because it is a note of language, okay. So I'm not suggesting for one moment that we dumb down the language, but I think we need to explain the language, because I think that's why people don't do certain things, because even like recycling, people don't understand. So we need to do that. And I think also looking at what we could do in terms of LCAW, I think we have ethos, we have mission statements, but we don't have a code of conduct. And I think that a code of conduct is something we could all consider bringing that in so that things can be accountable. Because, people, we have this mission, we're going to do all these things, but we don't, it's not actually accountable. We know data's king, but we don't collect the information that means that we can identify where the resource needs to really go so that we can make the change. And I think London, we've got those mechanisms in place. Anyone who organised an event should have had some way of monitoring who are the audience that attended their event. Because otherwise, how we know, we can always talk about how wonderful our projects are, nothing wrong with that, but how are we truly monitoring that to engage the individuals? And we're not doing that. And to me, that seems a little bit of an oversight on our behalf, because we can do it. The tools are there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Very practical recommendations. And I also am seeing a 3-line whip that we have to wrap up very quickly.
Oh, so sorry.
So our 3 remaining panelists, speed talk, please.
I feel like I'm representing creative industries and education. I think definitely lots more joined up thinking, because, for example, projects like ours have revealed massive gaps in the curriculum and how the curriculum just isn't fit for purpose. So we need help, small organisations showing stuff that's coming up from their work that can then be amplified by bigger organisations, also funding, also skills, because lots of arts organisations and education organisations are doing great work, but they don't necessarily know how to talk about their work. So it's also leaning into different organisations' skills to amplify the work that's going on. At ENO, I was involved with conversations about how do we also look at the creative production processes and move them forward at rapid speed towards net zero, because a lot of the way in which cultural production is happening is way off. That includes where we experience culture and whose voices we're hearing from and various things in there. So there's a lot.
Thank you. No, it's fantastic. And there's a commonality in what you're all saying also. And Kathy?
I'll make it quick. So really looking forward to seeing more events further integrating youth in their events, and also from our side, really looking forward to also supporting these events and mobilize youth and also children from all around London to participate in these events, and also to support Globe in the school summit, and also the surgery with MPs, and also definitely looking forward to LCAW22, and hopefully by then we'll discuss outcomes of COP27, which hopefully will include loss and damage finance, global goal adaptation, new collective quantified goal, and many other critical things that are definitely on the top of our mind, and we'll continue to work together, work towards the next COP and the COP after next.
Thanks, Kathy. And Nick, please help us bring this to a close.
I'm going to go a little bit off-piste and suggest that we need a London Climate Action Week softball tournament in a park.
Softball tournament. I was going to ask you to organise something at Wembley next year. I think that's where we need to meet.
Because actually, London, the Climate Hub in London, and all those companies and non-profit organisations, and it's second to none, really, in terms of that community. And we come together in conference rooms, we come together at events like this. And actually, I think for once in a year, one day in a year, we should step out into a green open space and do something different. And actually, I can't think of a better way to do that than by putting 100 teams together playing softball for one day in a park, because the interaction would be brilliant. We're not talking about policy, we're not talking about anything serious for the day, although that's obviously going to happen. But actually, we're meeting and interacting with people, and I think it would be, bad pun, but knockout in terms of doing that and organising it. So I'd like to see next Friday, LCAW, in a year's time, on a Friday, a softball tournament with companies can register, everyone registers as a team, there's no charge, and we just effectively organise a round-robin, winner stays on softball tournament. And it doesn't matter who wins, but it's the interaction and the fun and celebrating the community. Well, it does matter, actually.
Yeah, so this is being very provocative. So there will be lots of responses, because actually for last year, and it's not true that we're not doing anything outdoors, because our schools are having outdoor classrooms, we're having loads of things in parks, etc. And actually the idea last year was to have a yoga, for our faith community. We would think, what can bring all the different faiths together? We have an interfaith climate service which launched LCAW last year. 13 different faiths across London, which is the epicenter of faith, including the pagans. And the one thing we agreed on, we have an international yoga thing supported by the Indian government in London's parks. So there's a lot of good ideas, but as you say, the need to bring this conversation outside of the conference halls. And on that, abject apologies to you, Carla. Sorry, we could have gone on and on, but over to you. And thank you very much to all of the panelists.
Thank you.